Welcome into Fire Mountain Gems and Beads. I'm Patty. I'm a jewelry designer here. And today we're going to be making this beautiful beaded amethyst cuff bracelet. Isn't this a fun style? It's really simple to make actually, and I feel like you can do it. You don't need a lot of tools. There's just a few supplies. And if you want to go ahead and make this bracelet, just check out the materials list in the description box below. So let's look at the materials that will be in this bracelet that we're making. So we've got some gold-plated findings. We've got a wonderful magnetic clasp. It's really good quality. We've got some ear wires. We've got a couple of different shapes of spacer beads. One is a rondelle and one is more of a he-she shape. Then we've got these amazing amethyst matte beads. Matte is really popular in gemstones right now. I think you're really going to love this. And some jump rings and some ParaWire in 20 gauge silver-plated gold, which is one of my very favorites. I also wanted to point out that you can make the earrings that match this bracelet with the very same technique. It's just a shorter strand. So the first thing we're going to do is cut the piece of wire that we're going to be using. This is actually one continuous piece of wire. It's about 24 inches long. I might cut about 25 inches for safety. I always like to cut a little extra wire. So let's go ahead and grab our ParaWire and pull it out. And I'm going to eyeball it. I'm pretty good about eyeballing lengths. You can use a ruler if you want to. If it's a little wonky, you can use a wire straightener to straighten out that wire. It's a great little tool. You just go at different angles. It turns into a little, it's flat here and it turns into a little pyramid and the wire goes right in the middle. Like that. So now I'm going to make a loop in the wire about 10 inches up. I want a little more wire on one side than the other because, as you can see, one of the wires going through the bracelet is straight, so it's not as big, and one is curvy. It curves back and forth and back and forth. That takes a lot more wire. So right about, I think, here, I'm going to take my round nose plier and I'm going to make a loop right there. And then I'm going to take the long tail and pull it so the long tail is kind of going outward and the short tail is coming off up to the top here. Now I'm going to grab the inside of that loop, the wire on the inside with pliers. You can use your round nose or your chain nose, and I'm just going to make a little bend in it. So we have a 90-degree angle, like a lollipop on a stick. And then we've got the tail going off to the side. You want the short tail being the one that's really perpendicular to the loop, and the long tail that's going off to the side here, this direction. That's pretty important for threading this properly. Now I'm going to rotate that loop so the long tail is moving away from me and the short tail is to the side. And then I'm going to clamp that loop. You can use your bent chain nose or your chain nose pliers to do that. And I'm clamping it pretty close to the juncture of the loop. Now I'm going to take that long tail and I'm going to make a wire wrapped loop here. And I'm going to go around about 4 times. The reason being, on the other end, we're going to have 4 wraps. So we want the ends to match. All right. So the wire got a little bent. I'm just going to finger straighten it a little bit. There we go. That's good. So now you have this wire wrap loop and it's a little wonky. You know how you fix that is you take your round nose pliers and you put them back in. And with pressure, you just kind of round that back out. Very nice. Okay. So this is one end of my bracelet that I will attach my clasp to. Now I'm going to start this inside thread of beads this way. And so I've got one Hishi bead, a small amethyst, a big amethyst, a small, and another Hishi bead. So we're going to thread those on this middle section. So there is our Hishi, a small amethyst, a large, a small. Find the holes there. These matte amethyst beads have great size holes. They're really easy to work with, just so you know. And one more Hishi. And I'm going to let those fall all the way against the loop on the shorter tail. Remember, these do go on the shorter tail. Now we're going to thread the first little loop that goes around the outside here. So we're going to put on 6 of the small rondelles, a Hishi, a small amethyst, a Hishi, and 6 more of the small rondelles. So we're going to go ahead and thread those on the long tail. Now I'm going to be holding this by the short tail so the beads don't fall off of it. So we're doing 6 of the little rondelles. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those little gold rondelles. And then we'll thread on 1 of the bigger gold Hishis, a small amethyst matte bead, another of the larger gold Hishis, and 6 more of the small rondelles. And just make sure you hold this other end. It's really easy to drop it and then have your original beads fall off. Okay, there's 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we're going to let these all kind of fall together. So this is what it should look like at this point. You have your loop on your shorter tail, you have your 3 amethysts with the little Hishis, and then you have your larger pattern of beads on the long tail. Now you're going to take that long tail and let it naturally kind of arc around the other beads on the short tail, just like that. It kind of naturally, when you pull it around, don't pull it by here, pull it down here, and it's naturally going to want to just make a curve that's just right. And you want to be pushing the amethyst beads and those gold Hishis on the shorter tail down as tight as you can against the loop. Hold those, kind of clamp those down. And you're going to wrap the long tail around the short tail 1 time, just like that. Kind of finger straighten that out a little bit. Use your nylon jaw pliers if you need to, or your wire straightener. I find that the nylon jaw pliers, if you're working close in like this, are a little easier. Okay, so there we have our first little bump out on our beads. And we're going to do this pattern over and over again 8 times. That's all this bracelet is. So let's do another one. I'm going to take my chain nose pliers here, and the little loops that I just wrapped around, I'm going to make sure they're nice and snug together, and I'm going to make sure that everything is pulled as hard against this loop as I can get it. It's not going to be 100% no space, but you can make it as good as you can. I'm just going to keep working on this because we're going to do the exact same thing a few more times, and we're going to come right back and show you how to finish it off. Okay, there is my pattern. My bracelet pattern is complete. I still do have a little bit more opportunity here to take up some slack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this one more time And then I'm going to take my flush cutter and I'm going to snip off what was the longer tail, the tail that is going around making your bump out pattern. Okay. Then whenever you snip off wire like that, tuck in the tail. So take your chain nose pliers and kind of go around in a circle, just making sure that's all nice and tucked in. All right, now we're going to make the other loop at the other end that's going to hold the clasp. So we've got one loop here, we need a loop at the other end. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and I'm making a wire wrap loop. So I need to leave a couple of millimeters space below my plier, between the pliers and the piece, in order to have room to wrap after I make my loop. Now, I do have some extra slack in the piece here, so I'm just going to push this down and see how much slack I have, pushing it down as hard as I can, and that's just about the right amount. So I am going to, pulling hard, leave a couple of millimeters of space there, and when I let go, it's going to spring back up, but that's okay. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and take my round nose pliers and make my loop. And I'm really paying attention to where the tail that I just cut off is coming out. So it's wrapping this direction. This wire wrapped this direction. And so when I bring the loop around, I'm going to wrap that the opposite direction so the tails meet and become kind of seamless. So let's go ahead and make that loop and make sure that I'm bringing my wire around the opposite direction. So this was going this way, this wrap will come around toward me. This one went away from me. This one is coming toward me. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead, you know what, I really like my bent chain nose to clamp the loop because it puts the body of the plier away from my work area. But you could do it with either. So I'm going to clamp my loop and then I'm going to kind of pull that, give myself that slack back. And I like to use my round, I know I'm a little bit strange, but that's okay. Everyone's got their own way. I like to use my round nose pliers to wrap with. You can use your chain if you like. And I'm just going to start wrapping tight against the loop and then going down until I take up all of the slack. Feel really good about that. Okay, now I'm going to look at where the last tail that I cut off leaves off. It's right about here. So I'm going to cut this tail off about 1 millimeter away from that because it's sticking out, and that'll give me room to clamp that down. Okay, you notice how I held on to that wire. Always hold the wire or put your hand over it when you're cutting. That way it doesn't fly up into your face. Okay, now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and go around in a circle and just tuck the tail in and try and make it as seamless as possible. So I really want those tails to kind of meet. And then if you need to, you can take your chain nose pliers and kind of squish the wraps against themselves so they're nice and neat looking. And if your loop got a little off round, you can round that back out. Just make all these little adjustments that make it more perfect. Okay, now I'm just going to curve the bracelet around a little bit. And you want the loops to kind of be almost flat against each other when you add the clasp on, just like that. And then here's my clasp, and I also have to leave room for those couple of jump rings that we'll use to attach the clasp. So I'm just going to take my chain nose pliers. This jump ring's already open. Yay. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that jump ring. And the clasp is magnetic, so it wants to attach to the pliers. That's okay. Once you get the clasp threaded onto the jump ring, you can let it just attach to that bent chain nose plier. Put your loop on and close it up with your opposite plier here. Rock it back and forth to make sure you get a good tight connection. And then on the other side, let's pick up another jump ring. And we'll put that in the bent chain nose pliers. You put the little opening of the jump ring right near the tip of those bent chain nose, and you open it sideways like that. That's how you want to properly open a jump ring. Then I'm going to attach my clasp on first, because the clasp is going to want to kind of be attracted to the pliers. So if you put the clasp side on first, get that on there, just let it go ahead and attach to those pliers, and then close it up with your opposite plier here. Rock it back and forth so you have a nice tight connection. And there you have your gorgeous wire wrapped amethyst bracelet. Isn't that pretty? It's such a fun design. You can make the earrings with that same technique. It's just a 2-section chain instead of an 8-section chain. If you had fun with this video, make sure and like it. Also share, subscribe, and comment. We'd love to interact with you. And we will see you next time. Like what you see so far? Click on the link in the description below to sign up for our email list and learn more about jewelry making techniques and supplies.